Van Jones. Now, Van Jones is this so-called resident leftist at CNN, leaves much to be desired. I think it was when Trump, when he got that poor widow to stand up at the equivalent of the State of the Union, this character melted, Van Jones, and said, oh, now he's really a president of the United States. Or maybe it was later on when he shot off some cruise missiles. I think it was the first. So Van Jones says the Russia thing is BS. Yeah, look, the alt left, people who are members of the alt left, right? We know who they are. We know what they believe. Last year, they were telling us you can't fight the Republican presidential nominee because Hillary Clinton is the greater evil. It's baloney. And I think every day that goes by shows that this is not true. The other one is that this year, right, you can't be worried about Russian meddling in the U.S. election because, that would put you in the same league with the U.S. intelligence community. And we know that that you can't do that, right? You can't be presentable if that's what you do. It's kind of a social prestige question. So I think, Van Jones is very foolish. People at CNN are very foolish. But there's obviously something bigger going on. You remember a couple of weeks ago, we said it looked like there was a lot of pressure on NBC, right, different company, to fire Lawrence O'Donnell and quite possibly some other news people at MSNBC, right? We were told that Maddow was being targeted, that Chris Hayes was targeted. In other words, this anti-Trump lineup that MSNBC has in the evenings, right? Not Greta Van Susteren, different kettle of fish, right? Schooled in the ways of Fox News. Some others are different. We also remember that there was an attempt which succeeded, right? The biggest casualty so far is that Scott Pelley is out as the head of CBS Evening News, and he's now replaced by this other guy who seems to be rather milder vis-a-vis the Trump administration, although that may not be conclusive. It's also worth mentioning that this Kathy Griffin, with her very foolish, very ill-advised gesture, with this sort of Grand Guignol theme, right? You've seen it all. We don't have to go through it. That she was also fired from CNN. Right now, there's a lot of pressure on CNN, right? This character that we mentioned before, Bonifield, Van Jones, Kathy Griffin, it all focuses on CNN. There's another one, which is that CNN had a story involving this guy, Anthony Scaramucci, who was a Trump supporter, an official of the Trump transition team. And they had a story about his financial relations with some Russian entity, which they have retracted. And it turns out they retracted it under the threat of legal action. Now, what might be behind this? I think the general background that you need to know is that discussions have been proceeding for a while now involving the acquisition of Time Warner, which is the parent company of CNN. So let's call it Time Warner CNN for the moment, is in the process of being bought by AT&T. And in particular, this focuses attention on this guy, Jeff Zucker, the head of CNN. Now, we are critical of Zucker. Zucker is the guy who insists on having these, what can we say, cognitively impaired Trump surrogates come on his air, right? That whenever they have these big signature sort of CNN panels, they've always got some pro-Trump spokesperson, and each one of them is more incoherent than the previous one, right? And it's a tissue of absolute nonsense. But he insists on that. So we don't hold any brief for him. But the idea is that Zucker and the entire leadership, right, the executives of CNN, are afraid that if Time Warner CNN gets bought by AT&T, they will lose their jobs. And one thing that is relevant here, I'm looking at an article in Yesterday's New York Post. New York Post is these days reactionary. People know, but they're telling us that the top leadership of AT&T is in a good relationship with the Trump administration, right? So the idea is you should, take it easy, go easy, don't push it, because if AT&T becomes the top boss, then maybe you're going to be out. So I think what's going on is a relatively sophisticated operation, right, at different levels to try to intimidate, silence, chill, disorient, threaten CNN. For a news organization, the anti-Trump profile is the passport to survival. In other words, it's great to have a tax break, but if you don't have any income, right? And that's what's going to happen if you become pro-administration.
I see what you're saying.
That's going to be terrible. And I think MSNBC is a good example. MSNBC is not led by enlightened people. The fact is that MSNBC has succeeded in catapulting themselves to the top of the ratings, at least in the most desirable demographic categories, right? Maybe not total listeners and viewers, but Fox News has been in turmoil. They've lost a lot of people. They're discredited, right? They're, moral turpitude all over the place with them. So that's problematic. And then MSNBC has taken a clear political stance, and they've been rewarded. And Maddow is now the top program in cable news, and once again in that key demographic. So you got to choose, right? And you got to choose income over tax break. And I think CNN would be well advised to, as a matter of fact, to make their message even clearer. Although they claim that they've been very clear, and certainly their guy Acosta at the White House, it was good to hear him challenging Spicer the other day when Spicer insisted on this blackout, right? That you couldn't film it, you couldn't broadcast it as pictures live. You had to record it, and then only you could put it out later, right? So this sort of strange press conferences, right? It really is very strange. It really is just outrageous. It's crazy. It's unprecedented. It's suspicious, right? It's sleazy that they do these things. But well, this is part of their dog and pony show that they do, right? In other words, this is entertaining for these poor dupes that still support Trump, even when he's trying to take away their health care and their pensions and all this other stuff. It doesn't register. Or better yet, it takes a long time for that stuff to register, right? These people they're slow, so they take a while. Anyway, that's the point. In other words, you have to be aware that there are organized attempts to maybe not exactly silence, but to suppress certain kinds of reporting. So that's, I think, the story with CNN.